Lop Nur, also known as Lop Nur, is an exotic name that raises eyebrows and goosebumps among hardcore adventurers. Nicknamed the Sea of Death, it's an arid, unearthly salt flat ravaged by sandstorms where the temperature can range from baking to freezing. Like a hungry creature, the desert has consumed many explorers who dared to venture into its domain. Some even believe that Lop Nur is haunted. In June 1996, legendary adventurer Yu Chunshun, celebrated as China's first extreme highway trekker, failed to turn up at the end point of his 96-kilometer trek in Lop Nur. A grueling search followed. 5 days later, a helicopter spotted a blue tent in the desert. Inside was the body of Mr. Yu Chunshun. He had been dead for several days. Strangely, his body was discovered outside his planned route of advance. How did this happen? Born in Ezhou, Hubei, Mr. Yu Chunshun lived in Shanghai most of his life. From 1988, he began his treks over extreme distances throughout China. Within 8 years, he had walked over 40,000 kilometers, the equivalent of circling the Earth at the equator. In an age before live streams and social media, his journeys were covered extensively on television and various publications. Yu Chunshun became a sensation, a household name. Having walked into Tibet from every direction, Mr. Yu set his sights on China's deserts. His first target was Lop Nur, one of China's 4 great uninhabited regions, 四大无人区. Little did he know that this would be his last expedition. Lop Nur was once a vast inland sea in the Tarim Basin in present-day Xinjiang. It shrank into a seasonal, wandering lake that completely dried up after the construction of reservoirs damming rivers from Tian Shan mountains that used to feed it. Now, what's left behind is a wasteland encrusted with salt and sand. The region is notorious for sandstorms, searing heat, and vanishing explorers. There is a local maxim, never enter Lop Nur in June. Yu Chunshun, being Yu Chunshun, chose precisely that month, the hottest and most unforgiving season. Now, meanwhile, sponsors had assumed that the Shanghai TV crew would stage manage the whole trek like the cheating amateur trekkers to Tibet who gained fame, fortune, and notoriety through their popular live streams.
小友吧，又看见一个徒步的，这是真徒步还是假徒步？你前面有一辆车，看一看。
I've made another video on the subject of cheating and clueless highway trekkers who treat extreme adventure like a walk in the park. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. So, the filming crew initially planned to transport Yu Chunshun to various spots in the desert and record him trekking after stepping out of the jeep. They would then pick him up, let him get off at the next landmark, film again, and then edit the whole video into a heroic trekking documentary without showing the jeep. But when the crew arrived in the oasis town of Kola at the edge of the desert on the 31st of May, Mr. Yu was uncooperative. He refused to cheat. He insisted on walking the entire way with only indirect vehicular support. All attempts to dissuade him had failed. They tried persuading him to postpone the expedition, but he argued that postponement would derail his upcoming Taklamakan Desert trek in September. Or more likely, he feared sponsors would abandon him if he put their marketing plans on hold. On the 6th of June, in front of Kola's Lowland Hotel, local officials and media held a send-off ceremony. There was much toasting, dancers performed, and Yu Chunshun audaciously declared his intent to shatter the myth that Lop Nur was impassable in June. 2 jeeps, a team of 10, and a carefully planned route was drawn out under the guidance of geological engineer Zhao Ziyun. His nickname, the Walking Map of Lop Nur. Yu's trekking route would cover 96 kilometers. On jeeps, the team covered the entire route, burying food and water in the sand at designated supply points. Yu went with the jeep to see where his supplies were buried. He would also observe the jeep tire trail, which he would be following when he started his walk. Now, the starting point was set at Tu Yin Ruins, an archaeological site. Various metal tools and even glass have been discovered in this mysterious ancient settlement. Before the desert swallowed up the inland sea of Lop Nur, there were many thriving ancient settlements here. From Tu Yin, Yu Chunshun would trek south following a jeep tire trail to a T-junction. His trek would then turn west from the T-junction. Just 2 kilometers west from the T-junction would be his first designated night stop, where food and water were buried. From here, the route continued westwards following the tire trail until a man-made feature believed to be a watchtower. A few kilometers west of this watchtower was the second planned night stop, where food and water were also buried. A few kilometers further west would be the ghostly ruins of the ancient city of Lowland. From here, the route continues northwards to the end point of the expedition, HQ Qianjin Bridge. Apart from the night stops, there were at least 6 other spots along the jeep tire trail where bottled water would be buried. Yu Chunshun had only intended to use the tire trail to guide him, claiming that by the time he learned how to use the GPS, he would have completed the journey. Days before the expedition, Yu Chunshun followed the support staff on their way to burying supplies in designated water resupply points. Yu noted the T-junction south of the starting point at Tu Yin. From here, the tire trail splits in 2 directions. He would need to follow the trail heading west. The other track went southeast. While burying supplies at lowland ruins, Yu reiterated his decision to walk alone without any external support. The crew urged him to reconsider. Zhao even offered to join him. Yu refused. "Don't worry," he said. "If anything happens, I can only say that heaven wants me dead." On the morning of the 11th of June, Yu Chunshun began his solo trek. His gear was very minimal: a blue tent, sleeping bag, a mat, a Tibetan knife, a notebook, 2 bottles of water and some ginseng. He refused to carry a GPS, dismissing it as unnecessary as the markings on the sand was obvious. Zhao reminded him to leave early in the morning, break and rest at noon, then continue for a few hours before dusk. Yu responded with his usual refrain, "Don't worry, I will succeed." That afternoon, the filming crew got worried and went after him in a truck. They caught up with him some distance before the T junction. Yu dismissed their concerns and told them to go back. They noticed that his backpack looked surprisingly light and flat. He had obviously passed a resupply point without stocking up. Nobody sounded the alarm as he was way ahead of schedule and just a few hours from his first campsite. This brief exchange became the last footage of Yu Chunshun alive. On the 12th of June, a violent sandstorm swept over Lop Nur. The storm continued till the next day. Yu Chunshun did not show up at Tianjin Bridge on the morning of the 13th. The team lit bonfires that night, hoping that they would guide him to them. On the 14th of June, a day after he was supposed to have arrived, they sent out several search parties, but to no avail. Only on the 15th did the crew alert the authorities and radio for official rescue. Unfortunately, there was a sandstorm. Then on the 17th, several rescue teams were dispatched, scouring the ruins and the riverbed. Finally, on the 18th, a Soviet-made Mi-17 helicopter joined the search. It flew past Tuyin and Lowland, then flew over the Tarim Basin. Southeast of the T junction, a flash of blue appeared. It was Yu's tent. The searchers rushed in. A stench filled the air. One corner of the tent had collapsed. Yu's Tibetan knife lay at the entrance. Its sheath was missing. Inside, Yu lay on his back, head towards the east, right fist clenched across his chest. His face was swollen, blistered by the sun. His hair was soaked in liquefied body fat. His body had shrunken from desiccation. Strangely, his mat and clothes were neatly folded. 2 pits in the ground nearby showed that he had tried to dig for water. The autopsy result was dehydration and acute organ failure. His stomach was empty. He had eaten nothing since the 11th of June, the first day of the expedition, and the date of death was estimated to be 13th of June. Remarkably, his body was just 2 kilometers from the T junction in the wrong direction, and as the crow flies, it was just 3 kilometers from his first intended campsite, where food and water were buried for him. He was so close to sustenance. As another sandstorm was closing in, the crew wrapped him in a white sheet and hastily buried him with his belongings beside the salt mound. There was no time for an elaborate ceremony. Even as news broke and the whole country was in shock, an obvious question popped up. Why had he gone southeast at the T junction instead of heading west? Some argued that he had deliberately gone off the intended route to avoid the team that kept offering to help. Others postulated that he sought a photo opportunity at the center of the ancient sea of Lop Nur. Now, the most likely answer was the most straightforward: exhaustion and error in judgment. He missed the turn. Confident that he would arrive at the campsite within a few hours, Yu didn't bother to pick up a few bottles of water at the resupply point before the T junction. By the time he realized that he had missed the turn, he had gone too far in the wrong direction without water. He tried to backtrack, but 2 kilometers to the T junction, he was rendered too weak and too confused by dehydration to carry on. The desert didn't give him a second chance. The following year, his team returned with funds to build a proper grave. His knife was left there. Even in death, Yu found no peace. Grave robbers stole his Tibetan knife. Opportunists erected new tombstones for him, but bearing their own names, hijacking his fame. His younger brother and father fought several lawsuits for custody of his belongings. His father also sued journalists for writing unfavorably about him. Years later, Zhao Ziyun, the Lop Nur expert, died in a car accident. His ashes were buried in the heart of Lop Nur. In 2008, another extreme trekker by the name of Lei Tiansheng would outdo Yu Chunshun by trekking 1,100 kilometers of Lop Nur in 31 days. He became the first to trek this distance around Lop Nur. On the 19th night of Lei's trek, he camped by Yu Chunshun's grave and swore that that night he felt someone trying to press a blanket against his face. He also heard strange moaning sounds in the distance. Scientists dismissed Lei's paranormal experience as wind and hallucinations, but Lei insisted that they were real. Shivering in his tent that night, he had even called out to Yu Chunshun to bless his expedition. No one has successfully repeated Lei Tiansheng's feats since 2008. Today, entry into Lop Nur is forbidden. Even then, reckless and ill-prepared folks had sneaked in, and Lop Nur obligingly accepted the sacrifices, including those who went on jeeps. The desert is merciless. Nobody remembers the ordinary folks who died, but Yu Chunshun's fate stands as a warning and a lesson. Nevertheless, the most valuable lesson comes from the one who survived. Lei Tiansheng didn't take chances. He carried 70 kgs of equipment and supplies, GPS, satellite phone. There was once when he failed to find his buried supplies and his satellite phone was not working. He sent out a smoke signal for an emergency resupply. The desert is dangerous, but survival is not just about luck. Lei's success had a lot to do with his cautious approach and his presence of mind. Still, none of that managed to keep the ghost of Yu Chunshun out of his mind. Now, why do I celebrate a reckless adventurer like Yu Chunshun? I salute his honesty, something that is missing in most adventurers in China today. And here's the insulting irony. Yu Chunshun spent years in reformative training after being caught stealing in school. Finally, there is something else about Lop Nur. Another secret is the test site for China's nuclear weapons. I don't know if Yu Chunshun knew anything about these craters, but Lei Tiansheng certainly saw and wrote about them, including the abandoned bunkers and laboratories. These are what I found on Google Earth with a little help from ChatGPT. I'll see if you can find more. So, could Lop Nur explorers have another enemy besides Lop Nur itself?